I think that one worked. Ugh. Today, I'm fixing some rust holes with some J-B Weld. This stuff. This vehicle is a 2005 Toyota 4Runner, and unfortunately it has the notorious hatch rust, which happens underneath that rubberized sound deadening material that was installed by the factory. And if you don't know what I'm talking about and you own a 4th gen 4Runner, you need to take a look at your rear hatch, because most likely you have rust here as well. Now, I did ponder on this one, trying to figure out what the best method of repair would be. And while of course I wanted to weld up the holes, I also wanted to have a backup method, something that I could do that was a little less invasive, a little easier to do, something that anyone can do. And I'm happy to report that this very day, I attempted the weld method. I did everything I could to set up my welder, have some backing material there to make the welder think the material was thicker than it actually was. I did everything I could to try to get a good result. And unfortunately, the result just wasn't that good. And it was a whole lot of effort. And even if I would have gotten that perfect, there would have still been weld material that I would have then had to sand down, thereby making this already very thin sheet metal that is now pitted from rust even more thin, and thereby potentially compromising this metal even more. So final result, and kind of sort of what I wanted to do and what I was hoping to do, I'm going to be using this J-B Weld steel stick, and we're going to see how good this stuff works. Okay, backing up a little bit here, you can see the inside of this hatch, and you can see this kind of gray area that looks a little splotchy, and all this area down here with the holes. You can see there's a pattern there, and everywhere you see that pattern is where that sound deadening material was. Now, I've already went ahead with my heat gun and scraped it off, which is pretty easy as long as you got enough heat. But then I was left with all this pitting, which you can see. And what I did was took my light and I was able to find the deepest pits. I took a pick and I was able to poke right through all the deepest pits, revealing the holes that were just about ready to poke through. And with that method, I was able to reveal all of the worst holes, and you can see there are quite a few. And this side over here is where I first noticed the paint bubbling on the outside of the vehicle. And so after revealing all the holes that needed to be fixed, I cleaned up this sound deadening material even more, cleaned it with some alcohol, and now after having attempted the welding method, which you can see the back of right there, which doesn't look too good, and there's a big bubble of weld material, I think I can start applying the J-B Weld epoxy. This is the stuff I'll be using, and the reason why I chose this is because it's more like a thicker putty, which seems to be exactly what I'm going to need to press into each one of those holes. It says right on here the strength is 4,000 psi, plenty strong. The set time is only 5 minutes. The cure time is only 1 hour. It says easy to use and works on multiple surfaces, including steel, and it also says great for automotive and machine parts. How'd they know? Now, my plan of attack here is to knead this up into a little ball and go from the inside and press it through the holes. That way I can make sure from the inside that I have it covering all of the holes, and on the outside, as it presses through, hopefully that material will help to hold on to this steel, and then I could easily sand it down, make it smooth, and I think I'd be done with the repair. All right, let's open this up and see what it looks like. What do we get? Okay, so we can see there is 2 different colors there. Obviously the putty, and then there's a hardener in there. All right, so I'll go ahead and use a razor blade to just cut off a small section of this. Something like that. Now I'm gonna try to cover all this back up the way it was, put it back in the tube, and put the cap back on. Hopefully I can just reuse this at a later date if I wanted to, and it's not going to harden or anything. But back to our piece that we are going to be kneading together, and all I'm going to do is just start mixing it up. You can see it's getting a little darker. We'll just keep going here. I think because it's easy access, I'm going to start with these 3 holes right here. I definitely don't need this much. And I'll go ahead and just press it in. Something like that. I'm going to press it right up into that hole and just kind of smear it in. Now, here's the other hole. Same thing, just kind of pressing it in. And I'll just go right over to that other and last hole And I'm trying to make sure I leave material back here because I want this to be, you know, a semi-permanent fix. I'm not just trying to simply fill the holes, but I want this to kind of be a backing as well. And here's what it looks like from the outside. It looks like little worms. Of course, that just shows that I was able to push a lot of this through that hole. So I'm kind of thinking I might just take this off just like that. I took care of all of the holes. You can see they are all patched at this point. I did the best I could to press the epoxy into the holes and leave a somewhat flat surface on the back here. That was the first one I did, which seems like it was really the best one. This is the one I did where the epoxy started getting a little too hard. And here's another one I did. And here's the last one on the end that had a lot of little holes all clumped together. And from the outside, you can see the material pressed through the holes, and I just left it there for now. It does look really weird, but at least I know I was able to get a lot of that material up through those holes. And then once it fully cures, I'll break these pieces off. Then I can lightly sand it down. But if you look close at this one here where I attempted the welding, you can see there are still a couple of pits from the top side here. So I'll probably come back with some normal liquid type epoxy and try to get some of these pit holes from the top. And I'm thinking I'll probably do that for all of them. Now, it hasn't quite been a full hour for the cure time yet, but I wanted to see if this was hard. This was from the first application that I did, and it seems really, really hard. Let's drop it on the concrete here and see if it makes a sound. Wow, are you guys hearing that? That sounds like a rock. Extremely hard. Now, the other thing I wanted to see, being that this is steel reinforced, is this magnetic? Yep, magnetic. So at this stage, this is plenty hard enough for me to go ahead and keep processing my repair. So I do think it's cured enough to go ahead and start breaking some of these fingers off of here. Wow. Those are really hard. That's good. And here's some of these longer ones. And after the sanding, it looks pretty good, but you can see, if you look really closely, that there are still some little pits in there. Same thing for these ones, and especially this one where I welded, and even these here, and this one, and this one. So I applied the steel stick from the inside. It pushed through the holes, creating these little fingers that I just had to break off once it cured. I sanded them down, but it did reveal some pitting. And the pitting is okay, it's actually not that bad. I could probably simply cover that with some sandable primer and everything would be fine. But what I think I'm gonna do instead is get a little bit of the more liquid type epoxy and apply it to the top. I have a little bit of this J-B Weld, quick setting steel reinforced epoxy. Sets in 6 minutes. I cut the back open to see just how much I had, and I think I have plenty. Okay, that went reasonably well. I filled in all of those little micro pits with this more liquid type epoxy. You can see these applications here. I went over them multiple times, trying to push that epoxy into those pits. And I think if you look at the worst offender here, you can see that that epoxy did get down into those pits. And I think that's gonna help secure that steel stick epoxy that I applied from the inside. And here's another area I did. You can see it did fill in all the pits. It's now the next day. I let everything dry overnight, basically almost been 24 hours, so plenty of time for this stuff to cure. And this is what it looks like. Basically exactly what it looked like when I installed it. But I will say that it feels hard as a rock. So I think I'm gonna take a piece of sandpaper and just try to knock down some of the really rough edges. You know, just stuff like this, these little pieces that are hanging off here. Yeah, this stuff feels rock hard. I have this pretty coarse piece of sandpaper here. It's meant for drywall. I'm gonna see how well this works. Works pretty good. And after I've knocked everything down, you can see how smooth this is now. Even the thicker glob here and these thicker ones over here and this far one as well. Now looking at the outside of the hatch here, the epoxy is all dry. so I can start to sand this down as well. And to sand down the outside, I'm going to use this 400 grit wet or dry sandpaper. And actually resorted to wet sanding with that 400 grit, and this is what that looks like when it's all said and done. I was able to get all of the excess epoxy off, which is exactly what I wanted. Now the only epoxy that remains is in all those little crevices that were left behind, and that was the whole goal here with that epoxy. Well, with that wet sanding, the repair itself, the filling of the actual holes, is done. What I need to do now is protect this bare metal and prepare it for the vinyl wrap. And to protect that bare metal, I bought this Rust-Oleum filler primer. This is a high build formula. I've never used it before, but it's supposed to be like a really thick primer. It says that it fills surface imperfections, and that's kind of what I'm wanting. I'm wanting the last resort here, this primer, to get down in any sort of grooves, any sort of area that needs to still be filled that perhaps I can't see. So hopefully this works the way I'm thinking. I can spray this on, and then I can sand it down to a really flat, smooth surface. Putting some alcohol, this is 91% isopropyl alcohol, and that's because I have this entire area taped off, and I just want to give it a quick wipe down. Woo! And here's what that first coat looks like. The bottle does say apply 2 or more light coats a few minutes apart. There it is. Not perfect. I'm going to wet sand this. Probably take a lot of it off, to be honest. All right, it is now the next day yet again, and this primer is completely dry and actually looks quite good. Well, to wet sand here, I'm going to first start off with the 400 grit again. I have my bucket of water down here. We'll just go for it and see what happens. I'm going to start on the edges here, and it's definitely coming off pretty easy around the edges, which exactly what I want. I think I'll just use this 400 around the edges just to kind of feather that edge there. I'm not pressing hard at all. Okay, now I'm just going to kind of sand the entire piece here, not just the edges. Just very, very lightly, just to knock down some of the high spots, I guess. I can see, like I was saying, a couple of those high spots, those convexed surfaces, definitely went right back down to bare metal. We just have 2 here, and then I think 2 here. One of them is barely there, but I might have to just hit those again in those spots. But for the most part, I think we're good. Running my hand over this, it feels extremely smooth. You can see I have this paper rolled and I have this little paper towel roll. 2 rounded edges here. I don't want to put paint everywhere. I'm just trying to cover these 2 little spots. So I'm trying to feather this, hoping that it doesn't get, too much to where I then have to re-sand stuff. All right, I'm gonna hold my breath here. I got some glasses on here. Perfect. That was perfect. Well, with the primer sprayed on both this spot and this spot over here, everything is now covered. I'll probably touch up these 2 primered spots just very, very lightly with like an 800 grit wet sand or something, just to try to get some of the outside edges, the little splatters, to kind of be knocked down a little bit, just to make it smooth. But I really think the next step here for me is going to be to remove these logos. We have the Toyota logo here, and then over here on the passenger side, we have the 4Runner logo. And as much as I love these, I really do, I like having these on vehicles. It just keeps it factory looking. I'm gonna vinyl wrap this, so I have to remove these in order to do a good vinyl wrap job. I could probably put them back on later. Not sure if I will. I don't know if this fishing line is too thick. This is 8-pound. Oh yeah. I can tell already it's Braking. I was probably pulling way too hard on that. Plus it's hot. Okay, here we go. Here we go. That's working really, really well. The sawing motion is the key here. Wow. Okay, don't fall, buddy. Don't fall. There we go. That's how you debadge a vehicle. And that, my friends, was really, really easy. And there's what the back of it looks like. Well, now, unfortunately, I am left with all of this adhesive, and there's a lot of it. All right, I've just got some warm water here. No soap. Just want to try to run some of the dirt off. Oh, wow, yeah. That's simple. It's just wanting to roll right off. Look at that. That is great. Who needs an eraser wheel when you have human skin? That residue was very, very tough to remove, so I resorted to wet sanding with 800 grit, which isn't the most ideal situation because obviously it removes some of the clear coat. I really think this could be polished out if I wanted to, but like I keep saying, this is all going to be covered in vinyl, so I'm not super worried about that. Now this side, however, you can see that 4Runner badge did etch into the paint. There definitely is paint damage all around where those letters were. So just like the other side, the only way to remove that residue was with 800 grit wet sanding. That looks like it's clear coat, but it's not. It's actually still some residue that's on there. It's a bit sticky on each one of those. And I tried to sand a little more to get it off over here on the R, but unfortunately went through the paint. So again, not a big deal, but that's just what you're going to deal with trying to remove the badges here. Well, again, we're in a new day. I did already wash the back of this hatch in preparation for applying the vinyl. Now, I also bought some of this 3M Knifeless Tape, and I've never used this before, so this should be interesting. And here's what this Knifeless Tape looks like out of the bag there. All right, having never done this before, bear with me. I found the end here, and if you're curious what Knifeless Tape is, it's a way to be able to cut through vinyl without having to use like a razor blade. Now, I don't want to be putting a lot of tension or pressure on here at all. And here's what that looks like. You can see I've got this tape kind of lined along this body line here. And then if we look up close, you can see I have to come down where the body line shifts. And what I'm trying to do here is create that turn with the filament itself. And hopefully you can see, although it's obviously not going to be absolutely precisely perfect, I think it's going to be good enough. Well, I've got that Knifeless Tape all laid out, but let's take a closer look. If we look closely at this turn here, you can see while the green tape part doesn't look too good, that filament does. The filament inside looks like a nice turn. I'm hoping that's good enough. Now here's the vinyl I'm going to be using. It's by Vivid. It's a patternless, small camo, and it does have texture on it, so it's got this really fine kind of texture. So you can see I basically cut a piece off of my roll that is taller than what I need because the tape is going to cut the excess off, and it's obviously wider than what I need. So the trick now is going to be to lay this vinyl as good as possible. But I think the one thing I'm lacking right now is some heat. It is relatively cold, and I know to lay vinyl properly, I'm gonna need some heat. So I think I need to turn on my heaters in here and get it warmed up. With the Knifeless Tape laid out across the body line there, I put my vinyl up. I do have a heater going here. Now I also don't want to get a bunch of dust on this. So I'm just going to go slowly but surely. Okay, a little bit of static wants to pull it. That's interesting. Okay. Wow, look at that static. Wanting to pull it to the body. Need to get a little bit higher there. Well, that's not perfect, but that probably would have worked. I mean, mainly, I'm assuming I want it as level as possible for the pattern, although it's patternless. Okay, let's see. Okay, I think we're going with the first idea. And get a small success going here, just so I can get some confidence under my belt. Get a little bit of heat on here. I could definitely feel some of those convexed surfaces, and I knew I would be able to, but the whole point here is that even though I can feel them, this is going to hide it quite well. Oh yeah, that's better. See, this way I can slide my hand across this, I can still feel everything, but my skin isn't sticking, you know, to this. That feels nice. Okay. The glove. Yeah, now I can use my palm. There we go. There we go. Use the tools. We have the little dent here that I'm trying to make sure is all pressed in. I really think the trick here is taking your time. Not panicking, not trying to rush or go too fast because you're panicking. I'm also fighting with the leave well enough alone situation going on in my head here. I know it's not going to be perfect, and I'm not trying to make it perfect, but I just want to do as good a job as I can. I've already finished this entire side all the way up to the knifeless tape, and it went perfect. I don't feel a single air bubble or anything. Feels fantastic and looks fantastic. I could see how this could become enjoyable. Like when you get really good at this to where you don't have to think, and it's not like a panic situation where you're wondering if you just ruined something or did something wrong. If you got really good at this, this could be very fun and probably lucrative if you decide to do it as a career. Yeah, I mean, if you got good at this, wow. This is something that would be, I mean, you could do this, you could run a business out of your garage. You got good at this and post it on social media, and people liked what they were seeing and what you were doing. Okay, looking at the whole piece here, we are practically done. We are laid out. The only thing I wanted to show you, you look closely at this area right here. It's when I started using the heat gun, and I think I may have got this a little too hot because it seems to be a bit deformed, and you can see like all these little creases right here, which is right over my knifeless tape. So I'm hoping that the knifeless tape will pull through that and I'll be able to push those creases out. But overall, we are laid out. I mean, you can see this stuff is perfect. It is laid out. I don't see or feel any air bubbles. So I think the only thing left to do is to pull that knifeless tape. Now the end of my knifeless tape is hanging off, you can see. So I'm assuming I'm going to fold it over on itself and then pull the filament. There we go. Perfect. And then I think we have to do kind of sort of the same thing here, where we, yep, pull it straight through. Okay, well that looks like it's working. I'm going to pull it straight through the vinyl. Wow. And then I know we have to kind of change directions here with, there we go. Wow. All right. Okay, then we have this green part left, which I'm going to pull out. Just going to come back. And press up. It's almost like you heat it and pull it back and it wants to like finish the job for you. It's really weird. Well, look, I'm not gonna lie. This looks sick! Guys, take a look at that. Remember the rust that I had to deal with, the fix that I did, the primer. I mean, if you think that looks sick, comment down below and let me know. I guess if you don't like it, comment and let me know too, but I think this looks amazing, especially for my first wrap job. I am super stoked right now. This is the first time that I've wrapped anything like this. I was a little nervous about this because it was large scale. Yeah, mostly flat surfaces, so I was kind of like, you know, okay with that. But there was this concaved kind of contour in there, made me a little nervous, and it was also just nerve-wracking dealing with such a large piece of vinyl. And it is laid down practically perfect. This kind of matches some of Toyota's latest vehicles. For example, the Sequoia, which has a camo print kind of like this on the fender flares. I also really like with this vinyl that because of the texture, when you move in the light, you can see that pattern kind of changes and it just looks really, really cool. All right, well, I thought I'd bring you up real close to the cut line of that knifeless tape, and you can see how literally perfect it is. I mean, this cut is just perfect. There's no jagged edges or anything like that, and it cut through effortlessly. Now, looking closer here at this corner where I had to change directions, I think I got that pretty good. I mean, that cut probably isn't the best in the world, but it's not bad. Now, of course, the theme continues as you look down the line here. It's just a really, really good cut. And here's this other turn here. Just looks really, really good. Now let's open the hatch and look at the edges here. And you can see where the vinyl is just wrapped around this edge. And you know, yeah, I'm sure if I did this 10 times in a row, I could probably get really, really good at this. But this isn't bad at all. I'm actually really impressed with this. And the other thing I want to point out is that none of those convexed, holes that I created are even visible whatsoever. And the other cool thing is that dent is hardly noticeable at all. I couldn't even tell you where it was by looking at it in person right here. I mean, that dent is practically gone. I mean, it's still there, but it's hidden quite well. Well, it's definitely gonna take some getting used to because, that's a big change. It looks different, but I do like it. Well, we've gone through quite a lot in this video. The one thing that I haven't discussed yet is the inside of this panel. After the repair, how am I gonna protect that? All of that previous rusted surface, I did some sanding in there, so there's definitely bare metal in there. How am I gonna protect that? Let's take a closer look. Well, here's what we're looking at after the repair. You can see I did sand down all of those spots of the epoxy putty. So they're pretty flat, and also to my eye, it looks worse on camera than it does in person. And you can see some of the bare metal there from sanding and processing this rust. And the same thing goes over here, though it's not as bad. And like I was saying before, I think this spot right there was the worst offender. A little bit of surface rust left, but not too bad now. I'm really impressed with this steel stick putty epoxy. I think it worked out really well. I was able to push it up into those holes, push it out through the other side. I was then able to add more epoxy on the outside, sealing off any sort of open cavities or anything like that. I then sanded it all down, then applied some filler primer, sanded that down, and then covered the ugliness with this really cool vinyl. But I need to figure out how to seal off or finalize this inside metal. I can't leave it like this because it's bare metal. And whenever it rains and the rain runs down this back windshield, some of it goes inside, and that's why there's weep holes, because it's meant to do that. But as that water will run down, it'll stay in there and potentially cause more rust. So I've considered POR 15, POR 15. And I really thought that that was the way I was going to go. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I think I'm going to go a different direction. And that direction is this, something I've been using for a long time, something I used a lot on this 4Runner after I bought it, fluid film. Everyone knows this stuff. It's lanolin, or basically sheepskin oil. It says right on here, protects all metals, lanolin-based, superior lubricant, no solvents, long-lasting, non-toxic, non-hazardous. I really like this stuff. From my experience, this stuff lasts a very long time. You spray it on a surface, it somewhat dries after a little bit. It's still, wet, and it creeps. That's what I like. That's what I like and what I think is going to be best here. I can spray down this whole inside here, and any of the little nooks and crannies that maybe a paint wouldn't have been able to get to is going to be covered by this oil. I think that's the way I'm going to go. But I want you guys to let me know what you think. Would you go the way of like using a POR 15 product and coating the insides, essentially painting it? But there's multiple steps with that product. It's not just painting. You got to clean it, and then you got to prep it, and then you got to paint it. So I know that it's more than just spraying some primer down. Would you just spray primer? Would you just spray some typical paint? Or would you go this way, some sort of oil? I like fluid film. I know there's other ones that are like it. Let me know what you guys think, the way you think would be best handled on the inside here. So I do hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed watching this whole entire process. I know it's a long video. If you've made it this far and you haven't yet hit that thumbs up, please don't forget, it helps this video and the whole channel. And also, if you've watched this far and you're not yet a subscriber to the channel, consider subscribing. I'm Jimmy here with One Road, hoping that you like this episode, and I will see you in the next one. On second thought, I just decided to use the lanolin oil. Let me know what you think. Did I make a mistake? Should I use POR 15 or some sort of paint? Let me know. I think that's going to be great.